May 16th, 1983. The Pasadena Civic Auditorium, 47 million people are watching a man in a black sequined jacket do something that looks physically impossible. He spins, he freezes on his toes, and then he glides backward like gravity just forgot he existed. The moonwalk. 2.5 seconds that changed pop culture forever. The audience is screaming so loud the building is shaking. This is the moment Michael Jackson stops being a former child star trying to break out on his own and becomes the king of pop. And backstage, immediately after, that same man, the one who just delivered the most legendary television performance of the 20th century, is crying, sobbing, because he didn't stay on his toes long enough during the final spin. He wanted to freeze there, suspended for a moment longer, and because he didn't hit that mark, in his mind he failed. The world just watched him rewrite the rules of performance forever, and he's devastated over a microscopic imperfection that literally no human being on the planet noticed. This is Michael Jackson, the man who sold more albums than anyone in history, the man who changed music videos from promotional tools into cinematic events, the man who made Thriller into a cultural phenomenon that 40 years later still makes people do the zombie dance at weddings and Halloween parties. And that moment, that crying backstage after the most triumphant night of his career, sure, that tells you everything you need to know about his birth chart. Because when you understand his placements, his crippling perfectionism, his overwhelming sensitivity, his desperate need to escape into fantasy worlds, the way his greatest gift became his greatest torment. It was all written in the stars from the moment he was born in Gary, Indiana. His Virgo Sun demanded perfection but would never let him feel like he achieved it. His Pisces Moon craved escape from a reality that was always too harsh, too overwhelming, too much. And that tension between those two placements, it made him magic, and it broke him. But wait till you hear how his Pisces Moon predicted exactly how he'd cope with fame, and exactly how it would end. And that Venus in Leo placement, it explains why he needed to be adored so desperately that he built an entire kingdom to reclaim something he lost as a child. Keep that in mind, because it comes back in the most heartbreaking way possible. If you're obsessed with understanding famous people through their charts, hit subscribe. Drop a like if you're ready to go deep on this one. And real talk, I need to know, do you think Michael's perfectionism was a superpower or a curse? Like, could you handle having a chart that pushes you relentlessly toward greatness, but never actually lets you enjoy it when you get there? Comment your honest take, because this one's genuinely complicated and I want to hear what you think. So let's talk about this chart. Michael Joseph Jackson, born August 29th, 1958, Gary, Indiana. That makes him a Virgo Sun. Now, Virgo is ruled by Mercury, the planet of intellect, communication, and analysis. It's an earth sign, which means Virgos are grounded and practical. It's also mutable, meaning they're adaptable and constantly evolving. But the thing Virgos are known for above all else? Perfectionism. These are the people who notice the one crooked picture frame in a room full of beautiful art. They're the ones who will redo an entire project because one tiny detail isn't quite right. They're detail-obsessed, methodical. They set standards for themselves that would make most people collapse from sheer exhaustion just thinking about it. And here's the shadow side that nobody talks about enough. Virgos are never satisfied. No matter how good something is, a Virgo can always find the flaw. They look at their own achievements and see only what's missing, what could have been better, what didn't measure up to the impossible standard in their head. The inner critic of a Virgo is brutal. It never shuts off. It never gives them a break. Now imagine that placement in someone who performs in front of millions of people. Imagine that relentless self-criticism applied to every single dance move, every vocal run, every performance. Now add his moon in Pisces. We don't have his exact birth time confirmed, so we can't nail down his rising sign with certainty. But his moon is definitively in Pisces. And this placement, this is where it gets really intense. Your moon sign represents your emotional core. It's how you process feelings. It's what you need to feel safe and secure. And Pisces moon is one of the most emotionally sensitive placements you can possibly have. These people feel everything, and I mean everything, They absorb the emotions of everyone around them like a sponge absorbs water. They're deeply intuitive, wildly creative, and they have this constant, almost desperate need to escape from reality. Because reality is too much. It's too harsh, too loud, too overwhelming. They retreat into fantasy, into imagination, into worlds they create. In their minds, where things can be beautiful and safe and soft. And when that escape becomes impossible, when reality keeps crashing in no matter how hard they try to retreat, that's when Pisces Moon turns to other methods of numbing, substances, isolation, anything that will quiet the noise. Remember this pattern because it explains everything about how his life ended. His Venus and Mercury are both in Leo, which gave him that magnetic stage presence, that theatrical flair, that undeniable need for adoration and applause. Leo placements want to be seen. They want to shine. They want to be loved and celebrated. But in Michael's chart, all of that Leo showmanship was filtered through Virgo precision and Pisces sensitivity. He didn't just want applause, he needed it. His Leo Venus craved it like oxygen. But his Virgo Sun would immediately analyze every performance and find it lacking. And his Pisces Moon felt the weight of all that attention until it became unbearable. This combination created the greatest entertainer who ever lived. And it also destroyed him. Let me show you exactly how. Michael was born the 8th of 10 children in a tiny 2-bedroom house on Jackson Street in Gary, Indiana. His father, Joseph, worked as a crane operator at a steel mill during the day and dreamed of musical success at night. He'd been a guitarist in an R&B band, but had to give up those ambitions when the family kept growing. His mother, Catherine, was a homemaker and devout Jehovah's Witness who sang and played clarinet and piano. Both parents were deeply musical, and the Jackson household was filled with music from the very start. But Joseph Jackson wasn't just a father who loved music. He was a manager with ambitions for his children, a taskmaster with expectations that bordered on obsession. And by all accounts from Michael and his siblings, he was brutal. Michael started performing with his brothers at 5 years old. 5. Think about that. Most 5-year-olds are learning to tie their shoes and playing with toys. Michael was rehearsing choreography for hours and performing in talent shows. The Jackson brothers became the Jackson 5 in 1966 with young Michael as the clear star, and Joseph enforced grueling practice sessions. Hours and hours every single day after school. If the boys made a mistake during rehearsal, there were consequences, physical discipline, verbal abuse, an environment of constant pressure and fear. Michael himself said in interviews that he was so afraid of his father that he would physically vomit when he saw him. His body would revolt from the sheer terror. That's not normal fear, that's trauma being stored in the nervous system. That Pisces Moon, already hypersensitive to emotional atmospheres, already absorbing every feeling in a room, was being raised in an environment of relentless pressure and punishment. And his Virgo Sun, it was being programmed from childhood to believe that imperfection was unacceptable, that anything less than flawless meant you failed, that mistakes had painful consequences. Michael once said that he would watch the world through a window. He'd see other kids playing outside, going to school, having birthday parties, experiencing normal childhoods, and he couldn't join them. He couldn't be a regular kid because he was working. He was performing in nightclubs at 7 and 8 years old, watching things no child should ever see. He recalled seeing strip shows, fights breaking out, adults behaving like chaos. And his family was Jehovah's Witness, which meant no Christmas, no birthday celebrations, no Halloween costumes. The Jackson house in Gary was the only one on the block without holiday decorations. His Pisces Moon desperately needed that childhood innocence. It needed play and imagination and safety and magic. But all of it was stolen from him before he even understood what he was losing. And here's the thing about Pisces Moon. It never forgets what it needed and didn't get. That wound doesn't heal. It just goes underground, waiting for the day when the person has enough power and money to try and reclaim what was lost. Remember that pattern because Michael spent literally the rest of his life trying to get his childhood back. The Jackson 5 signed with Motown Records in 1968. After getting the attention of Berry Gordy and their first single, I Want You Back, shot straight to #1. Michael was 11 years old, 11, and already his voice showed something remarkable. It had this quality that shouldn't have been possible for a child. Pure and precise, like his Virgo Sun demanded, but also absolutely drenched in emotional depth, the kind of feeling you'd expect from someone who had lived 3 times as long. That was his Pisces Moon bleeding through every note. Rolling Stone later described him as a prodigy with overwhelming musical gifts who quickly emerged as the main draw of the group. The hits kept coming like a machine that couldn't be stopped. ABC, I'll Be There, The Love You Save, Never Can Say Goodbye. By the early 70s, the Jackson 5 had their own Saturday morning cartoon, their own television variety show, and Michael couldn't attend regular school anymore because he would be mobbed by fans wherever he went. He was taught by private tutors between rehearsals and concerts and promotional appearances. A child living an entirely adult life in a world he never asked to be part of. His Leo placements, Venus and Mercury, made him absolutely magnetic on stage. He'd absorbed everything he could from watching the greats, James Brown's explosive footwork, Jackie Wilson's dramatic poses, Sammy Davis Jr.'s theatrical presence. He studied them like his Virgo Sun analyzed everything, breaking down each movement into components he could master and then recombine into something new. Fred Astaire himself would later call Michael after the Motown 25 performance and tell him, "You're a hell of a mover." Michael said it was the greatest compliment he ever received in his life, but here's the Virgo thing. Even as a child, Michael wasn't just talented. He was obsessively focused on improvement. He would watch himself on television and analyze every single movement, cataloging what worked and what didn't. He practiced in front of mirrors for hours until each gesture was absolutely perfect. He was already showing that relentless self-criticism that would define his entire career and eventually consume him. Because to a Virgo, there's always something that could be better. There's always a higher standard to reach. The target keeps moving no matter how much you improve. By the mid-70s, Michael started his solo career while still performing with his brothers. He released solo albums as a teenager that did reasonably well, but his real breakthrough came in 1979 with Off the Wall, produced by Quincy Jones. They'd met while working on the movie The Wiz, where Michael played the Scarecrow, and Quincy saw something in him that nobody else had quite understood yet. Off the Wall became the first solo album ever to spawn 4 top 10 singles. Critics raved about his voice, comparing it to Stevie Wonder's breathy, dreamy stutter, but with a distinctive quality all its own. The album sold 20 million copies. Michael Jackson had officially arrived as a solo superstar, but Michael was furious. The Grammys pigeonholed him into R&B categories, refusing to nominate any of his massive hits for Record of the Year or Song of the Year. Rolling Stone passed him over for a cover story. He was told repeatedly by industry executives that black artists on magazine covers didn't sell copies. The music industry had racial barriers that Off the Wall's success couldn't fully break through. And Michael, with that Virgo determination to prove everyone wrong and those Leo placements demanding the recognition he deserved, said something that probably should have terrified everyone who doubted him. He said, "Just wait. Watch what happens next." His Virgo perfectionism was about to create something that absolutely nobody could ignore. Thriller. The recording sessions began in April 1982 at Westlake Recording Studios in Los Angeles. On the first day, according to Quincy Jones, he walked into the studio and told everyone, "We're here to save the recorded music industry." The budget was $750,000, which would be well over $2 million in today's money. And Michael, working obsessively alongside Quincy, had one singular goal that he would not compromise on: create an album where every single song could be a hit. No filler, no throwaway tracks, no B-sides, pure perfection from start to finish. The Virgo obsession was in full glorious, slightly terrifying effect. They reviewed over 600 song demos before narrowing down the selection. They worked around on the clock, literally for days at a time without sleep. Quincy said engineers would have to be carried out on stretchers from exhaustion. Michael wrote 4 of the 9 songs himself, including Billie Jean, Beat It, Wanna Be Startin' Something, and The Girl Is Mine. And here's the fascinating thing. He didn't write them on paper like other songwriters. He would dictate the melodies and lyrics into a recorder, then sing them from memory during studio sessions. His brain just held it all perfectly. The perfectionism during these sessions became legendary. Engineer Bruce Swedian did 91 different mixes of Billie Jean. 91. They'd stay awake for 5 days straight, chasing something only Michael could hear in his head. Quincy wanted to shorten Billie Jean's intro, which runs about 30 seconds before the vocals come in, and Michael absolutely refused. He said that opening bass line made him want to dance, and if it made him want to dance, it would make listeners want to dance too. He was right. They remixed every single song on the album after initially finishing it because neither Michael nor Quincy was satisfied. They finished the final mixes at 9 in the morning on the deadline day, November 8th, 1982, 22 days before release. They had 3 different studios going simultaneously just to get everything done in time, and when Thriller came out, the world fundamentally changed. It spent 37 non-consecutive weeks at #1 on the Billboard charts, a record that stood for decades. It spawned 7 top 10 singles. The music videos weren't promotional clips anymore. They were short films with plots and character development and choreography that people still learn and perform today. The Thriller video alone is nearly 14 minutes long, with a werewolf transformation sequence directed by John Landis. In 2009, the Library of Congress inducted it into the National Film Registry, the first music video ever to receive that honor. Michael forced MTV to play his videos when the channel's playlist had been 99% white artists. He shattered the color barrier on mainstream pop radio in a way nobody had done before. He won 8 Grammy Awards at the 1984 ceremony, including Album of the Year. And Record of the Year, still a record for most Grammys in a single night. Thriller became the best-selling album in human history with over 70 million copies sold worldwide. Some estimates go even higher. And the moonwalk at Motown 25, it happened because Michael insisted on performing Billie Jean even though the show was supposed to feature only Motown songs and Billie Jean was on the Epic label. He convinced Berry Gordy to let him do it by agreeing to perform with his brothers first. He practiced the moonwalk in his kitchen beforehand, perfecting a move he'd learned from various street dancers. And when he landed on that toe after the spin, the one he thought he didn't hold long enough, the one that made him cry backstage, he created something that would be imitated by every single pop artist for the next 40 years. But remember what happened after. He was backstage crying to his brothers because it wasn't perfect. Because to a Virgo, the performance is never quite good enough. The standard is always just slightly out of reach. Even in his greatest triumph, he could only see the flaw. And now, we need to talk about the patterns. The Virgo perfectionism and Pisces escapism playing out over and over throughout his life in ways that feel almost cosmically predetermined. Pattern 1. His body. Virgo traditionally rules the body and health in astrology. These placements often manifest as intense focus on physical maintenance, on diet, on appearance, on trying to optimize the physical form. And Michael became obsessed with his appearance in ways that went far beyond normal vanity or the reasonable expectations of being a public figure. He had rhinoplasty multiple times. His nose changed dramatically over the years, becoming thinner and more sculpted with each procedure. His skin tone lightened, which he attributed to vitiligo, a condition that causes loss of pigmentation, but he also used additional bleaching treatments. His entire face transformed over the decades into something almost unrecognizable from the child who sang ABC. And here's the astrological read. His Virgo Sun looked in the mirror and only saw flaws. It saw imperfections that demanded correction. Every pore, every feature, every shadow was analyzed and found wanting. But his Pisces Moon created something even more painful, a kind of body dysmorphia, where the image he saw wasn't even connected to reality anymore. He was chasing an ideal that couldn't exist outside his imagination. He reportedly told biographers he wanted to look like Peter Pan, specifically like Bobby Driscoll, who provided the voice and served as the model for Disney's animated film, The Boy Who Never Grows Up. And that brings us to pattern 2, Neverland. In 1988, after first seeing the property while visiting Paul McCartney during the filming of their Say, Say, Say video, Michael purchased a 2,700-acre ranch in California and renamed it Neverland after the fictional island in Peter Pan. He installed amusement park rides, including a Ferris wheel, a carousel, and a small train. He built a zoo with elephants, giraffes, and exotic animals. He created a movie theater. He filled the grounds with statues of children playing. He surrounded himself with childlike things because his Pisces moon was still desperately searching for the childhood that was stolen from him in Gary, Indiana. He openly, proudly identified with Peter Pan. He said in interviews, "I am Peter Pan in my heart." He represents youth, childhood, never growing up, magic, flying. He wasn't embarrassed by this. He embraced it completely. And while the media portrayed this as bizarre behavior, as evidence that something was deeply wrong with Michael Jackson, it makes perfect astrological sense. Pisces Moon needs to escape. It needs fantasy. It needs a world where the harsh realities of life cannot reach it. Michael didn't have the resources to build that world when he was a child being abused and overworked by his father. But as an adult, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, he could create exactly the sanctuary his moon placement had always craved. Neverland was his Pisces moon made physical, a place where he could finally be the child he never got to be. Pattern 3, isolation and substances. As his fame grew to a level that literally nobody had ever experienced before, Michael withdrew from the world. He couldn't go anywhere in public without being mobbed. He started wearing surgical masks when he traveled, which he said was to protect against germs but also served to hide his face. He was photographed with Bubbles, his pet chimpanzee, which became fodder for tabloid ridicule. The media created a narrative around Wacko Jacko that portrayed him as a freak, an eccentric weirdo, someone to mock rather than admire. And his Pisces moon, which absorbs criticism and negative emotion like nothing else in astrology, couldn't handle that level of judgment. The more the world ridiculed him, the deeper he retreated. Into his fantasy kingdom, he became reclusive. He surrounded himself with people who would tell him yes to everything. And the substances started. Pain medications after a 1984 incident where his hair caught fire during the filming of a Pepsi commercial, causing severe burns to his scalp. Sleep medications because his Virgo anxiety made his mind race all night, analyzing every mistake, every flaw, every way he could have been better. His Pisces moon needed escape more and more desperately as reality became more and more painful. The accusations came in 1993. A 13-year-old boy's father alleged that Michael had behaved inappropriately. The case was settled out of court, reportedly for $20 million. Michael maintained his complete innocence. He said he loved children of all ages and races, that through them he experienced the childhood he had missed. His Pisces moon genuinely, truly resonated with children because they represented everything he had lost and everything he still wanted to be. And then in 2003, another accusation. Another young boy. This time it went to a criminal trial. Michael faced multiple felony charges that could have sent him to prison for decades. He hired the best lawyers money could buy. The trial was broadcast around the world. And in June 2005, after weeks of testimony and deliberation, he was acquitted on every single count. But his Pisces moon couldn't process this level of pain. The trial broke something in him that couldn't be repaired. He left the United States. He became even more dependent on prescription medications for pain, for anxiety, for sleep, for escape from a reality that had become absolutely unbearable. The pattern that had started as healthy fantasy and imagination had transformed into something genuinely dangerous. His doctors gave him whatever he asked for. He was surrounded by enablers who never said no. And his Virgo anxiety about his body, about his health, about sleep, manifested as insomnia so severe that he couldn't rest without pharmaceutical intervention. He asked for propofol. It's a powerful surgical anesthetic called Diprivan. It's not a sleep aid. It's supposed to be administered only in hospitals and surgical centers with constant monitoring by trained anesthesiologists. But Michael called it his milk because of its white color, and he insisted he needed it to sleep. He needed escape so badly that he was willing to be put under general anesthesia night after night just to find peace. His Pisces moon's darkest shadow. Escapism that has nowhere left to go except complete unconsciousness. June 25th, 2009. Michael had been rehearsing for his comeback concert series, This Is It, which was supposed to begin in London in just a few weeks. 50 dates, a massive production. He was 50 years old and seemed determined to prove he still had it. The night before, he'd rehearsed at the Staples Center until after midnight. At around 1 in the morning on June 25th, his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, began administering drugs to help Michael sleep at his rented mansion. First, a 10-milligram tablet of diazepam, then 2 milligrams of lorazepam by injection, then 2 milligrams of midazolam. Michael was still awake. More lorazepam at 5 in the morning, more midazolam at 7:30. Michael kept asking for his milk. He couldn't sleep. He insisted. Around 10:40 in the morning, Murray finally gave him propofol through an IV drip. Then Murray left the room. He went to the bathroom, made phone calls, left Michael alone and unmonitored while under the effects of a surgical anesthetic. When he came back, Michael wasn't breathing. His pupils were dilated. Murray attempted CPR. There was chaos and confusion. 911 wasn't called until 12:21 in the afternoon. An ambulance rushed Michael to UCLA Medical Center. At 2:26 in the afternoon, Michael Joseph Jackson was pronounced dead. He was 50 years old. The Los Angeles County coroner ruled the cause of death as acute propofol intoxication. The manner of death was classified as homicide. Conrad Murray was charged with involuntary manslaughter. His trial revealed that he had ordered massive quantities of propofol to be shipped to Michael's home, that he had been hired for $150,000 a month to serve as Michael's personal physician for the comeback tour, that he had deviated wildly from every standard of medical care. Murray was convicted and sentenced to 4 years in prison. He served just under 2 years, and the chart predicted all of it. That Virgo anxiety about his body and health that obsessed over every physical detail, that pushed him to seek pharmaceutical solutions for a mind that wouldn't stop racing. That Pisces Moon that needed escape so desperately it would accept surgical anesthesia just to find peace for a few hours. The combination that had made him the greatest performer in human history. It also made rest impossible. It made self-acceptance impossible. It made living in reality without artificial numbing impossible. But here's what I keep coming back to, what stays with me long after looking at his chart and his life. Michael Jackson changed absolutely everything. He made the moonwalk into a universally recognized symbol of cool. He transformed music videos from afterthoughts into art forms that people studied and emulated. He broke racial barriers on MTV and radio that had seemed immovable. He sold over 100 million copies of a single album. Every pop star who dances today, from Beyoncé to Bruno Mars to Chris Brown to anyone who comes next, is standing on the foundation that Michael Jackson built, with his relentless Virgo perfectionism and his boundless Pisces imagination. His chart gave him gifts that were genuinely unprecedented in music history. That Mercury and Venus in Leo made him impossible to ignore when he stepped on any stage. That Pisces Moon gave his voice an emotional depth that made millions of people feel understood and seen. That Virgo Sun gave him the discipline and the analytical mind to practice for hours and hours until every single movement was absolutely flawless. But those same placements carried shadow sides that couldn't be outrun no matter how famous or wealthy he became. The perfectionism that made him rehearse until he was flawless also made him weep after the greatest television performance of his era because he saw only the imperfection. The sensitivity that let him connect with audiences on a soul level also made every criticism feel like a physical wound. The need to escape that fueled his creativity also drove him deeper and deeper into substances and isolation, and ultimately to a bedroom in Los Angeles where a doctor administered anesthesia to help him sleep. Michael once said about his music, "I feel that somewhere, someplace, it's been done, and I'm just a courier bringing it into the world. I really believe that." That is such a Pisces Moon statement. This sense that he was channeling something bigger than himself, tapping into some cosmic creative source and translating it into sound and movement for the rest of us. And maybe he was. Maybe his chart was always going to produce someone who could express raw human emotion, and done before or has done since. But the cost of having that chart was everything else. The normal life, the peaceful mind, the ability to look in a mirror and actually like what he saw. The childhood he tried so desperately to rebuild as an adult at Neverland, but could never actually reclaim because you can't go backward in time no matter how much money you have. The king of pop. Sun in Virgo, Moon in Pisces, the perfectionist who could never feel good enough no matter how perfect he became. The dreamer who couldn't survive in reality no matter how hard he tried to escape it. The greatest entertainer who ever lived, and the saddest proof that sometimes our biggest gifts and our deepest wounds grow from the exact same place in our charts.